The first sign of them was the shadow. It swept across the Pacific like an eclipse that refused to end. The sun dimmed, its warmth swallowed by the cold outline of something impossibly vast. When the broadcasts began, every screen on Earth flickered to life with the image of the Invaders' leader. A towering, insectoid figure with gleaming mandibles and eyes like molten gold. "We are the Vraxis," it declared in a voice that rattled human bones. "Surrender your world or be consumed." Panic spread faster than wildfire. Entire governments collapsed under the weight of that single message. Martial law was declared in dozens of countries. The military was deployed with a speed that made even veterans uneasy. But for all the jets scrambled and missiles launched, none of it mattered. The Vraxis ships hovered like monoliths, enormous, silent, and untouched by any human weapon. Nuclear warheads vanished mid-flight. EMP bursts fell short. Hackers, hoping to score a win for humanity, were met with encrypted firewalls so advanced they might as well have been trying to outthink God. Their weapons were worse. Precision beams of red light sliced through steel and concrete like it was wet paper. Entire cities were reduced to ruins before anyone had time to flee. Tactical strikes, cold and methodical like a surgeon cutting away dead flesh. At first, it seemed random. Cities fell, while rural areas remained untouched. Some theorized it was a show of force, a shock and awe strategy to break the human spirit. But over time, the pattern revealed itself. The Vraxis were methodical. Cities weren't being destroyed at random, they were being herded. Routes were carved. Escape paths were funneled into containment zones. It was a hunt, but one with a goal far worse than extinction. They weren't here to conquer. They were here to farm. It wasn't a president or a general who figured it out. It wasn't a scientist at a think tank or a top-tier strategist. It was Elias Grant, a man most people would call a nobody. A former game developer, professional recluse, and borderline conspiracy theorist, Elias watched the Vraxis invasion like a player analyzing a boss fight. He saw it before anyone else. "They're not wiping us out," Elias muttered, his voice scratchy from lack of sleep. His room was a mess of old takeout boxes and crumpled clothes. His eyes, sunken from days without sleep, stayed glued to the live streams of falling cities. "They're managing us." He posted his findings on a half-dozen forums, ranting about containment cycles and farming routes. First, no one believed him. The idea that humans were livestock was too grim, too demeaning for people to accept. But as more footage came in, caravans of refugees being routed through controlled corridors, drones hovering just overhead but never firing, people started to listen. "Cattle," he said during a live stream to 1.2 billion people. "They're treating us like cattle. Cities are pens. Rural areas are grazing lands. They're pruning, not purging." The implications were chilling. If the Vraxis were treating humanity like livestock, then the question was no longer, can we win? It was, when do they harvest? The revelation sparked action. Not from governments or world leaders, but from the people. Hackers, engineers, programmers, and coders from every corner of the world came together in a way humanity never had before. That's when Elias proposed the unthinkable. "Farms have schedules," he said, pointing at a chaotic web of lines and numbers on his screen. "They run on strict cycles. Harvest times, feeding times, maintenance times. If we can mess with the clock, if we can break the farm schedule, they won't be able to manage us anymore." The idea was as brilliant as it was reckless. The Vraxis relied on perfect synchronization to keep control. Their ships didn't hover by instinct. Their drones didn't patrol randomly. Every movement, every strike, every moment was part of a larger schedule, a network of perfect timing. If you controlled the clock, you controlled the farm. Elias called it the misfire protocol. It wasn't a virus. It wasn't a hack. It was something simpler, more brutal. Every network connected to Vraxis systems would flood their timing algorithms with garbage data. Random timestamps, recursive loops, infinite countdowns. A clock so clogged with nonsense that even a perfect machine couldn't parse it. The goal wasn't to shut them down, it was to desynchronize them. The first ship fell over Jakarta. It didn't explode. It didn't detonate. It simply dropped, as if a string holding it in place had been cut. The monolithic vessel tilted on its axis, crashed into a skyscraper, and carved a trench through the ground. The world watched it happen live. No one knew what had caused it. No missile had been launched, no weapons fired. Timing, Elias explained on another live stream, his face lit by the glow of his monitor. Their timing's off. The misfire protocol worked. For the first time, humanity was on the offensive. More ships fell. More drones hovered in place, their pre-programmed schedules suddenly out of sync. Some collided in mid-air. Their perfect maneuvers became sloppy. Delays appeared in their response times. The invincible hunters were suddenly vulnerable prey. The guerrilla war exploded overnight. Military leaders who had seen their weapons fail for weeks suddenly found targets they could hit. Vraxis drones staggered in disjointed waves, arriving seconds too early or minutes too late. Human soldiers who had once been cannon fodder turned into hunters. For the first time, the world wasn't losing. Humanity was fighting back. It took 6 months for the Vraxis to retreat. The moment was surreal. Ships that had hovered in the skies for so long people thought they'd become part of the landscape began rising into orbit. One by one, they pulled away from Earth's gravity, their hulls scarred with human-made weapons and debris. They weren't fleeing in a panic. They were leaving on schedule. Even with the misfire protocol disrupting their system, the Vraxis managed to restore some form of control. As the last ship disappeared beyond the clouds, the world erupted in celebration. But Elias didn't celebrate. He sat alone in his dimly lit room, staring at the retreating ships like a chess master watching his opponent's next move. "They'll be back," he muttered. "And next time they'll account for chaos." His words sent chills down the spines of world leaders. The United Nations begged him to consult on new defense protocols. Tech companies offered him millions. He declined every offer. "You're still thinking like them," he said during his final broadcast. "You're waiting for them to play by the rules. They won't. Not next time." The stream ended with no further explanation. Elias Grant disappeared a week later. His house was found empty, his computer gone. His hard drives had been wiped. His online accounts went dark. There were theories, of course, abduction, government cover-up, even sabotage by Vraxis agents left behind. The truth remained a mystery. But then the sightings began. Quiet at first. Blips on radar. Unexplained flashes in the night sky. Signals that weren't quite human, but not quite Vraxis either. It was subtle, too subtle for most to notice. But those who knew Elias's work, those who understood how he thought, saw the pattern. "They're not leaving us alone," said one commentator. "They're just watching, waiting for us to go back to sleep." But some believed Elias wasn't gone. "Have you noticed the satellites?" One user wrote on an obscure forum. "They're moving, shifting in orbit. Someone's up there, changing things." Rumors spread. Hidden broadcasts, ghost signals. Some claimed Elias had gone to space. Others claimed he'd built a second misfire protocol. Something bigger, something smarter, something autonomous. The final message from his anonymous forum account read only this: "If you can't win the game, change the rules.